Hello, my darlings. Welcome back to Radio Wasteland. I am your host, Chauncey Haworth, and this is my trusty sidekick, Sean.
Hello.
I'm not sure if I should call you a sidekick. I don't know if that's like a demeaning.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you know, Robin was a sidekick, and eventually he takes over the mantle of Batman.
Totally. In between, he was Nightwing.
I'm fine with being called the best acrobat in the world. That's what That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. And this is my flying Grayson.
Yeah, I'm just on a trapeze over here. No one can tell because it's radio, but I'm performing incredible stunts.
Totally. He's tied up like a knot right now.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome.
So tonight we have a reoccurring topic. And it's one of those topics that's reoccurring because, so many people are...
It's a good one.
Because it is a good one. Greg Bakun is our guest, and he's from Minnesota Ghostbox, and he has his own radio show also, Minnesota Ghostbox Radio. And they have a very, very impressive... video cast on YouTube. The production value of this show is really quite amazing. We've shared it on our Facebook. You should check it out. You see so many things on YouTube and on the internet where you're just all like, oh, good God, I can't believe they put that up there, but this show, they could filter it right in on Discovery Channel or Sci-Fi Channel, and you wouldn't bat an eye. You would think this is the real deal.
That sounds pretty special.
Yeah, and, ghosts and hauntings in general are a topic that we can always...
UFOs.
It is up there with UFOs, something that we can always come back to. There's always more. And it's something that the kind of cool thing about it is that most of the researchers don't even pretend to have all the answers.
Yeah.
They are making their own little collections, and their collections are being passed with other collections, and we're sort of trying to get an understanding. Mm-hmm. But really, they're just looking for proof of something, as opposed to thinking that they have all the answers.
Yeah, I've marveled at how fleshed out the field of, ghost research is in comparison to some other paranormal topics. And I mean, this is an example of one, but I'm pretty young, and I don't know that many people, because I've been, kind of a shut-in, because that's my personality.
Right.
But I've still met a bunch of people who have seen ghosts.
Right.
And I feel like, we all have. Not that we've all seen ghosts, but there's always someone
We've
who
all
has.
known somebody.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
It's terribly common, really.
Right. And they're never those...
And that's interesting.
Right, and they're not those,
No, they weren't wackos.
Right, they're not the wackos. They're like your grandmothers and your siblings and your, people close to you that you have to raise
Yeah, we've
an
all
eyebrow.
had the experience of, talking about ghosts and, oh, this guy believes in ghosts, he's crazy. And then another guy pipes up and is like, oh, I saw a ghost once. Mm-hmm. And they have this terrifying story of, they walked by a haunted house and there was this fully bodied apparition of some old lady or something.
Right, so with a lot of these topics... I kind of feel like they are genetically ingrained in us. And, since before man had thumbs, we were sitting around campfires sharing ghost stories, and so it kind of seems to me like it's one big urban myth until you realize that so many people talk about it. And then
That's
on top of that, in this world of media, you would think that people would be over it if there was nothing to it at this point. In this world of media, you would think people would go, well, season 76 of Ghost Hunters, I'm over it. But people are not over it.
No.
So
and that's because so many people have a personal connection to this topic.
Right. Yeah. So, I always want to ask direct answers of ghost researchers, and I never get them because, like I was saying earlier, I totally appreciate the fact that they don't really have them.
Yeah, we've talked to a couple of ghost people on this show.
Right, yeah. And Melissa Lockett here recently. As an update, Melissa has been kind enough. Melissa Lockett from Spirit in Sacramento, a paranormal research group, has been kind enough to invite us on 2 of their outings at this point. Anybody who was listening will remember that I straight up asked her if we could go. And she has invited us on 2, but they just haven't worked out for us, so my bad. Huh. But, so I'm pretty excited. Cool. This Ghostbox, I don't know, maybe I'm making a bigger deal of this thing, but I think he uses, Greg, our guest tonight, I think he uses some sort of device.
Really?
In his ghost hunting.
Well, the spirit people, they had a lot of paraphernalia.
But I think his device is something unique to him.
Interesting.
Right. Wow. So did he invent it? My first thought was, is this a bit of technology, or is this like, everybody knows I'm a horror movie fan. Is this like the Hellraiser box?
That's what really matters here.
Personally, I'm leaning towards wanting it to be the Hellraiser box,
and that's
but
what we'll be getting to the bottom of in this show. Is this the Hellraiser box?
Yeah, but I don't think it is. I think it's actually a piece of technology that he uses.
Well, either way, I feel like we should get some answers about, what is this mysterious box and how does it work?
What is this mysterious box? Yeah. All right, so our guest tonight is Greg Bakun, paranormal investigator from Minnesota Ghostbox. And we're going to commercial. You're listening to Radio Wasteland. All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland. And we are here with our guest, Greg Bakun. Am I saying that correctly?
You are saying it correctly. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. It's such an exotic last name for me.
It's very international, isn't it?
So it's nice to talk to you in person and, get to know a little bit of what you do. I had checked out your, I don't know what we call it, but your show, your web show.
Yeah, the web series, yeah.
Web series. And, I had checked it out before, and after we talked, I checked it out in much more detail, and I really got to back up what I said before, and that is the production quality is very impressive.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It's one of those things that, is we want to tell a story. We want to do it in the best way, in the most succinct way as possible. And if that means, getting some decent cameras out there and try to tell a decent story, and the story being about the people we're investigating, that's what it's all about for us.
Well, I got to say, in the opening credits, the opening title sequence, you actually ask the question that I've often asked and haven't really got a straight answer on, although I don't expect to get a straight answer on something that we're all learning about. But and it says, is every place haunted? And are they active? And I've thought about this, living in this world, you would think that we would be swimming in a sea of ghosts at this point. So do you think that every place has some level of haunting there?
I do. I really do. And I think the reason why that it just, to me, personally, is something along the lines that, like you said, there's a lot of spirits out there, people who have passed, people who haven't moved on to the other side or whatever. And, you consider the history of the world, and you consider how the size of the world, and then how it's overcrowded just with the people living, that to me it makes sense that they could be all over the place. That just because you're a spirit doesn't mean that you're going to be rattling chains or you're going to try to scare people. Sometimes they just want to hide, just want to be away from people. Something that always kind of frustrated me too was when I would talk to some friends at work or something and say that, oh, we're going to go investigate such and such a place, and they look at me and they'd be like, well, I didn't know that somebody died there. It's like, well, they don't have to die anywhere. I mean, they're going to die, obviously, but it doesn't mean because they died in this specific location that that's the only reason why it's haunted. And I think that's where people get kind of thrown off by the whole thing.
That makes a lot of sense because, it seems like places with traumatic events or very important events or places that people loved in life are the places that are haunted. If what your friends were saying were true, basically every hospital would be incredibly haunted.
True.
Yeah.
And to be fair, there is some activity in a lot of these places. Sometimes we're just not allowed to go in there and figure it out. But, I mean, it is certainly the case. But if I can give you an example.
Sure.
We do events in one of the most haunted hotels, voted most haunted hotel by USA Today, was the Palmer House in Sauk Center, Minnesota. And we go up there and we do events with another paranormal group called Things That Go Bump Minnesota, and we do all this stuff.
I love that
and
name.
I know, funny. It's a good name, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Well, the first year we couldn't stay at the hotel. Nicole and I couldn't stay at the hotel because it was fully booked. So we go to this hotel down the street, and it's just a hotel built in the 80s. Used to probably be like a Best Western or something like that. I can't tell you the amount of activity we got in there from people who have been staying in that hotel and who had worked in that hotel for years and years and years. And that's kind of a great example of, doesn't mean it has to be a famous place either to get a lot of great activity and get a lot of great responses.
Well, I think it's just like with anything else, people are suckers for celebrity. And therefore, if it's a famous place, they're more apt to get a famous ghost where somebody says, oh, I've heard of that person. But,
Sure.
but statistically,
absolutely.
the most likely are probably not famous, are probably people with traumatic lives that we've never heard of.
Now, this is
Oh,
interesting.
absolutely. I think there's a good chance too that you're going to these places that are famous and you're wearing them out. You're wearing out the ghosts. You might think, well, how's that possible? But everything's energy. Everything gets worn out. So if it's a very popular place and it's getting hit day in, day out with people wanting to talk to spirits and stuff, spirits get very worn out. But if you go to a place like this hotel, as an example, we ended up going to, they're just like, ooh, you can hear us, you can understand us. And Nicole is intuitive. She's a medium, and so they just glom over to her because it's like, wow, you can talk to us, and it's overwhelming to a certain degree.
Right. They were looking to get their message out there. Sean here, my trusty sidekick, has a question for you.
Yeah, well, I was wondering, do ghosts dissipate over time, do you think? Because that's always what I assumed. I always was going with this classic idea of, some places are haunted and other places aren't. But it seems like you're saying we've just got a lot of ordinary ghosts going on about their, undead lives in a realm that we can't access.
Undead unlives.
Yes, sorry. Didn't mean to offend any ghosts listening.
But no, I had the same question, and that was kind of my thought earlier about why aren't we swimming in a sea of ghosts from all the years of life on the planet? There might be ghost lobsters or whatnot.
Yeah.
But do they, and I don't expect you to have a straight answer for this, but do we think that they dissipate like Sean is saying, or do they have somebody help them pass over, or do they eventually maybe figure it out for themselves and pass over?
That's a really good question. And, I actually never had considered the idea of dissipating. I think what I personally believe, and it'd be interesting to hear what other paranormal investigators think, the spirits often, I think that they can find their own way to pass over if they're stuck over here. Spirit is going to be an intelligent entity that had passed along, that knows what's happening and that didn't know that they are in, this other realm. Sometimes they may wait till they feel like their business is finished here. Like if there's something that really bothered them before they passed away, something to do with their kids, or
Right.
sometimes even as silly as they're upset that their favorite room in their house is being redecorated. What happens is that they basically will stick around, and that's where you start getting sometimes spirit activity when remodeling happens, because you're starting to kind of tear down the walls of memories, so to speak. And basically, sometimes they don't want to leave until maybe there's some unfinished business. And then there's people like Nicole and other mediums and other people who are able to cross over spirits and help them cross over and show them where the light is. It always seems so simple when you're just like, go to the light, and they look and suddenly they see the light. But it's amazing how they need to be directed to do so.
Right. I guess the dissipation idea could also be kind of summed up in the way that I deal with life. I have a new life decision ahead of me, and I'm only 5% in, and time goes by, and I'm now 10% in, and a couple of years go by, and now I'm 100% in. So maybe it's passing through slowly due to fear or, whatever it is that they feel.
It could be. That's the interesting thing. And like you had said at the top of your show, you've talked to a number of us, and we don't really have the answers because we just don't know. I mean, I could make it up, but that'd be disingenuous, obviously.
Well, that's what I appreciate about the field.
It'd be pretty creative if I could make it up.
Yeah.
I guarantee that.
That's always what I've appreciated about the field is that, we've had some ufologist guests on here too, and a lot of them have thought that they knew the answer, and I was always kind of a little thrown back because a lot of the time, I'm a parent, I'm raising 3 kids, and a lot of the time I'm making decisions, but I don't know the answer, and that's in regular life. And so to be so confident of the answers outside, it makes me sort of raise an eyebrow, and that's something that I've always appreciated about paranormal investigators.
Yeah, I've been on, one of my earliest encounters I went all the way over to Indianapolis to a place called the Hannah House and did an investigation with a medium there named Ursula Kalin. She's very talented, and she got into a heated argument after we did some sessions, and a gentleman there had explained to her what happens to people when they die, and just how it goes, what they end up doing, what happens in their life. And it wasn't a religious conversation, because that obviously always can kind of rile things up a little bit too when you bring religion in.
Well, I would understand that conversation from religion more so than I would from a scientific angle. From a scientific angle, I think we confidently don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he was very adamant about it, and she was getting riled by it, and I don't blame her because he was so adamant. But she's just, kind of what we just said. It's like, we don't know until it happens to us. That's really the bottom line to it. And to be able to say with any sort of certainty what happens at this stage, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong because no one knows.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I personally like to think that I am a drop in the bucket, that at the end of my life I will go back in the bucket where I belong.
Yeah, that's just it. It's very possible. Energy can't be destroyed, so we're all energy.
Right.
Let's go back to the energy field. Maybe we're part of the sun for all we know.
All right, well, we're coming up on a commercial break. It'll be a few minutes. I hope you're sticking around. Yeah? Did I lose you?
No.
Oh, okay. I was making sure you were sticking around. All right, you're listening to Radio Wasteland. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Radio Wasteland. Greg, I am a big fan of horror films, which I think is very common of people who are into this stuff. Are you a horror fan?
Oh, yes.
Actually, I'm not.
You're not?
Funny enough. I'm a fan.
This interview is over.
Right? Talk to you later, loser. The thing is I like films that are based on paranormal stuff, such as the Conjuring, those stuff, Paranormal Activity, that
Entity.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the horror films, I really can't handle gore all that well, sad to say.
Yeah.
So when it's just a matter of killing people, it just doesn't do it for me personally.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good representation of me to say horror films. I like them supernatural. I want them supernatural. And normally before I do a show, I go out and I try to find a horror movie to inspire me for my show. And the only horror movie that I could find that takes place in Minnesota was Jennifer's Body. And it's not very ghosty, but it did prompt one question for me to ask you. And that is, of these entities that you run into, another horror movie I loved, Night of the Demons, put it this way, that ghosts are the spirits of people who were once alive and died, but there are other spiritual entities that were never alive at all to begin with.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Spirit said kind of the same thing. They made a pretty clear distinction between, hey, there are ghosts and there are demons.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you feel that there are things that are not ghosts?
Absolutely. Absolutely there is. And it's kind of a double-edged sword to say that, because the problem that we run into now with all these shows out there, with all of, everywhere you go, there's paranormal this, paranormal that. Destination America is nothing but paranormal in a lot of ways. That and buying homes in Alaska, somehow those fit together.
Yeah.
But this is when we get emails from people who want us to check out their house or, check out what's going on, the first thing they always say is, we have a demon. That's always the first thing. We have a demon bothering us. And, it's so easy to be like, well, yeah, we have, it's so easy that if we're hearing voices, hearing knocking on walls and stuff, well, it's a demon. Or if you hear names, like you hear your name just in the air, and it'd be like, well, that's a demon. The truth of the matter is that true demonic activity is a very small part of the paranormal process that we run into. I mean, most of the time we can debunk the demon side of it. Does that mean that it doesn't exist or that there's still something nasty bothering these people? Absolutely. The problem we run into is that say that you're a jerk in life, right? You lived your whole life just, pushing people into puddles or just being a bully. You're not going to suddenly die and be angelic. You're going to be that same jerk, and you're just kind of going to have the same things go on. And if you're in a house that someone else moved into, you don't like them, you're going to very likely be like, well, I have a little bit more power than I did before. I'm going to start moving stuff around, or I'm going to say their names, or I'm going to start screwing with these people a little bit and make them frightened and just be a jerk in afterlife as I was in life.
Right.
That's what we run into a lot of times, are people who are just they are in death as they were in life, and that's what we run into quite a bit. Now, have we been to places that have had demonic activity or something that borderlines that? Absolutely, we have. There's been a couple of occasions in particular that we're doing that we've been to those things. And I'm happy to say that Nicole is finishing up her demonology course that she's been taking, and she is going to be a full-fledged demonologist. And that's pretty cool. And that's going to be a great way to help a lot of people to discern whether or not they are dealing with demons, and if they are, she's going to be right there to help them.
Yeah, I was just wondering how you distinguish between, your run-of-the-mill ghost hauntings, or when you get into a situation where you're like, this isn't a ghost, we're dealing with something a little bit more extreme here. What does that look like?
Well, from what I understand a lot is that a great hallmark for this sort of thing, and I think it could come in a variety of ways, but I think the thing is that you run into, and Bishop James Long had said this the best, and it's always kept with me throughout my entire time investigating. And he's a well-known demonologist, bishop, works, I think, in the American Catholic Church, which is an offshoot of the Roman Catholic Church. And he always says that evil can wait. It is patient. And so more than likely, if you think that you're getting a demonic sort of attack, it doesn't just come out of nowhere. It's very, very deceptive, and it's very patient, and it builds up over time. It might come in the form of somebody, it might come in the form as a spirit that people might think is actually good. It might be something that people want to help with. You might come through a spirit box or come through an Ouija board, and it starts a conversation. And slowly, it becomes an infestation. And it slowly starts ramping up the activity over time to the point that once you invite that in, once you start allowing that into your life, once you're like, oh, this is something that's good for me and it's going to hang around me. I've heard stories of spirits where what comes across as spirit is invited into somebody's home because they think it's like a guardian angel or something.
Right.
That's when they have you. That's when the contract, if you will, is signed, and now you are dealing with a demonic infestation, and it ramps up over time, and it becomes one of utter. It destroys your soul. It crushes your soul. It makes you feel like that you cannot do anything, and it totally takes over. And that's when you know it happens, and it's going to happen before you realize it's happened. It's going to be too late by the time you realize it's going to happen.
Yeah, it seems
terrifying.
It seems like what you're saying is that, a ghost would maybe lash out, where something demonic would be much more premeditated and malicious in its activity. So
It's absolutely very calculated.
You're right. In what you were saying there, you brought up something that I would like to know about. What is this Ghostbox?
That's a good question, and I do have to say, because I listened to the top of the show, I did not invent it. It's been around for a long time.
All right.
I have probably other friends who are listening, like, he didn't invent anything. Don't give him that. But what it is, though, it's my personal favorite piece of equipment, and why I like it so much. It's very immediate in terms of getting a response. Most things that you use for paranormal investigating is not immediate. So what it is, basically, especially back in the 90s, before we had these digital sweeps for tuners on radios and whatnot.
Right.
Before like iPads or iPods and all that, like the small portable radios from like the 90s or something, and you could do like a scan to go from station to station to station. What this is, it basically eliminates stopping at any stations, and it scans through all of the radio frequencies, either on the AM or FM dial. The theory behind the spirit box is that the voices come through the white noise that is generated either through the static between stations or some of the more mass-produced spirit boxes. And so from there, you're able to, in theory, the thought is that the energy allows spirits to give responses to questions that you ask. Yeah. And so the spirit box that I tend to use is the one that the people who are really into this sort of thing don't like. And that is one that's a mass-produced one. And it goes through these stations at variable speeds, depending on what you want. I think the faster is the better for me, because you have less of a chance of actually picking up a radio station. Mm-hmm. And you ask questions, and then you hear responses. And if you've listened to our web series, or if you've gone to our website, we have a bunch of examples on there. I would hope that people can be like, I see what you're talking about. Not all paranormal investigators find the spirit box to be the end-all, be-all. Some hate it. Some do not believe that it actually works at all. But we've had a lot of great responses from it, and most importantly, these responses are intelligent responses, meaning that they're answering questions that we're asking. So that's a great sign.
Right. It's proof of the involvement. Well, we're coming up on our final commercial break. Another few minutes. I hope you'll stick around. You're listening to Radio Wasteland. Welcome back to Radio Wasteland. All right, Greg, we're in our last round here, and I have a question that I always like to ask my paranormal researchers. And I want to ask you, what's the scariest thing that you've had to deal with?
Well, this radio interview is kind of it. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't like your attitude.
Right? Enough of you, sir. So there's a place in Iowa, I always bring this up, is called Villisca, and it's that it's probably not a great place when they actually call the place the Villisca Axe Murder House.
Awesome.
And I mean, that's your first clue.
Sorry to laugh so much, but that caught me off guard.
Yeah. And it's actually a very dangerous place.
Really?
There were axe murders that
contrary to what you would think.
Yeah. It sounds so friendly.
Right.
So go ahead. There were actual axe murders.
There were murders that took place in this farmhouse in 1912. A number of children and parents were bludgeoned to death with an axe while they slept, though they probably weren't all sleeping when it happened. And it was such a big story that it took the Titanic off the front page of the newspapers across the country.
Oh, wow.
And it's been kind of this house that's existed. I mean, they never tore it down or anything. They've never found out who the murderer was of these children and of these parents. There's a lot of ideas of who it might be, but probably, I'm not exactly sure when. Might have been late 90s, certainly the early 2000s. a gentleman bought the house and opened it up for paranormal investigations. And they charge a hefty fee every night. Literally every night, they allow one team or whatever to spend the entire night there and investigate whatever. It doesn't mean that when people go there, they're only doing paranormal investigations. They might be doing certain rituals. They might be trying to conjure things in this place. This place is dark, and you want to talk about any sort of demons or any sort of elementals or entities or anything else, that place has a lot of frightening things going on there. And I still, to this day, kind of think about certain things that happen in that place, and it's frightening. It's actually a very frightening place. And for a while, I kind of figured that I'd be done doing paranormal investigations because of what experienced in that house. There's other paranormal investigators that I know who have gone there, and they've experienced very similar things, even some more, even more traumatic. And there's just, you go there, and I hate to say it, there's a bit of a thrill factor going there sometimes because you don't know what you're going to get. But that's totally the wrong reason to do this. And that's when you kind of have to be like, well, maybe this isn't a great place to go to. And some guy's profiting off of all this too.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of weird that he would open it up and allow ritualistic and all that stuff to go on.
Well, he lets you just stay in the house. He doesn't go there. It's just like, here's the keys, lock up when you're done. And so he doesn't know what's happening in
when
there.
you're done with your ritual.
So it's like a demonic Airbnb?
It can be.
Yeah.
It can be.
Yeah.
And then, there's this other, it doesn't have any electricity in the house, doesn't have any running water, doesn't have anything that could be, used as like sort of, well, this is why this is happening because the pipes are banging around or whatever.
Right.
The thing is, there is another smaller little barn that they built across from the house that you can leave the house during your investigation, go there. It has electricity. You can kind of just relax over there, and you're thinking, oh, well, this is safe. This is nice, at least to get out of that nightmare. And you go and you sit down until stuff starts moving in there too, and you're like, good God, this is now a nightmare. This is now frightening. Things are happening. There's a lot of like shadow figures running around. I don't know if you're familiar with what a shadow figure is.
Yeah. We've covered it a little bit on the show here. Yeah.
So it's a lot of stuff, and it's on the Spirit Box in particular. At the opening of our web series, there's a little bit of Spirit Box always in the opening. It says 6 people killed, and we got that from Villisca, and that's one of them. Another one is that is on our website that I ask for who's the spirit here bothering us? We need a name. I want to know a name. And the response I get is Satan. That's the name we get back. And I don't think for a second it's Satan. But at the same time, it cannot help but put chills down your spine when you're actually living that moment because it is already a bit of a nightmare in there. And you start getting these words and names coming through the Spirit Box or coming through whatever that is really frightening. It's pretty crazy.
A nightmare because things are moving and there are apparitions and that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what you kind of go there for, but when it doesn't have good intention, and intention is kind of on either side of the investigation. The paranormal investigator should have good intentions, and you're hoping that the spirits you're trying to communicate have good intentions. When the intention of the spirits are one to try to hurt or confuse or disorientate, that's a problem.
Well, we're coming up not too far from the end of the show here, so I want to make sure that we have a chance to talk a little bit about the other ways that people can get in touch with you. We talked about your web series, which is I can't get over the impressive production quality. How do people find your web series?
They can find it a couple places. YouTube is a great place to find it. We have our own channel. It's youtube.com/MN Ghostbox Official. It's MN Ghostbox Official, and I'm sorry for the official use. It's very over the top, but I had to do that for some reason.
Oh, believe
or
me,
you can
we
go
all
to
understand.
our website, and our website has like the Spirit Box evidence, and it has past radio shows, and has some articles that we have up there, and that's www.mn-ghostbox.org.
All right, and you have a radio show. So when does this air?
We are on the Parax Radio Network. We air every other Wednesday. I have a show this Wednesday. It's your time. It would be, I think, 8 to 9 Pacific, 10 to 11 Central, and we're an hour. And you can also catch our show repeats on the After Hours AM feed on iHeartRadio.
Awesome. Very cool. So we do have a few more minutes. I just wanted to make sure that we were able to get that in so everybody could know where to follow you. And I am telling you, listeners, this is some real stuff. It's some very professional, a great-looking website. You guys really put your all into this, and I think it proves that you take what you're doing very seriously. So given our last couple of minutes here, I'd like to just ask you, how'd you get started in this? Did you have an experience when you were younger that...
It's weird, and I'll try to be very quick with the answer. Basically, like when I was younger, like a lot of people when they're younger, they didn't have it. But as I got older and I got more interested in it, I just started like watching some of the shows, talking with other people and whatnot. The spirit box I use today was the one I bought a number of years ago, and it's still the same one I use. I was doing investigations and stuff on my own, and I stopped for a while. And when I stopped, I started dreaming about investigating every single night. Literally every night I was dreaming about investigating places. Nothing scary, no spirit showed up, just me in the act of investigating. And finally, it just overwhelmed me, and I started up this whole Minnesota Ghostbox thing, recruited Nicole, who's kindly been a part of this, and we've been just kind of seeing what we could do with it. We want to tell a story, we want to talk to different people and investigate. And really, that's it. We want to help people. That's really, at the end of the day, all we want to do.
Well, you guys are doing a great job of telling a story. I found myself getting sucked in. Give us that website one more time, would you?
Sure. It's www.mn-ghostbox.org.
All right, Greg. Well, thank you very much for being a guest on our show. We've really enjoyed having you. You've been listening to Radio Wasteland.